Welcome to this episode of Chattin with Staxx. I'm your host, Bill Staxx, and today I got William Steele. What's up, man?
What's going on, Staxx? Thank you for having me, man. I'm checking out your channel. It's pretty good.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you taking the time to come on my show, man. You got a lot of good stuff coming out, and I've heard quite a bit of your stories, but I wanted to bring you to my audience so they can hear some of the things that you've been through. So you want to introduce yourself to the people and
Yeah.
explain a
So
little bit about who you are?
yeah. So I'm born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. So New York City guy, and I come from a family where my mother was mentally ill, and there was a lot of bullies and people, picking on her. So I was always defending my mom, growing up. And then so I went to college. Went to real estate. Then I went to school to become a locksmith and alarm technician. I wanted to be a James Bond type guy, one of these guys get in and out of anything. Well, a friend of mine died. I tried cocaine. The rest is history. So I
How
started
old? How old were you when that happened?
about 22 when that first started.
So
Before that, like
you haven't been to prison up until this point?
up until that point, no, no,
No.
no. And so I got hooked on coke pretty bad, but I was started using my skills to become a very prolific jewel and art thief. I go all around the country. I stole millions of dollars in jewelry and artwork, and I'm not proud of it. I'm not here to brag about it. I'm here to try to explain to your viewers and my viewers that people can and do change. So what happened was I ended up getting locked up more than once, and but all those years I ran into some interesting people in California, New York, South Florida, Robert Durst, Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein, various circumstances, which are in my books. I wrote some books about these experiences, and so when I got arrested finally, it wasn't obviously for everything I've ever done, or I probably would have never seen the streets. So I got blessed. I escaped from prison. I had burglaries. I had fleeing and eluding from the cops, high speed chase, but I was trafficking kilos. I was also bringing, trunkfuls of kilos from in the 80s and 90s from South Florida to New York, and guns. We were running guns. And so in the middle of all my jewel thievery and stealing and, doing what I was doing, I was hitting oceanfront communities, gated communities. I would usually work alone because I didn't trust anybody and there was nobody to tell on if you worked alone.
Yeah.
I had many opportunities. I had guys that wanted me to, send me on jobs, and I didn't trust any of that because I just worked alone. So I'd always carry guns. I'd always had usually a pistol with a silencer. Now, I wasn't a hitman or anything, but I would try to carry myself that way because when you're dealing with traffickers, like in those days, I was dealing with one of the original cocaine cowboys in Miami, and these guys are super ruthless. And as long as you're doing straight up business with them, there's no problems. But I'm armed, they're armed, and also when I deal with jewelry fences, my jewelers, my art fences, I prop a briefcase open. I've got a couple 100,000 in jewelry. They see a pistol in there, whatever else I have. And so it sends a message. Sends a message not to mess with me.
Yeah, because they could try to rob you for all the loot that you just got, right?
Yeah. And now my video just cut out for a second. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I
Okay.
said that they could try to rob you for the loot you just got from the.
Right. So, I'm from New York. I think on my feet. I try to be one step ahead of the people I'm dealing with. And I realize that that's the risk of anything you're involved with. I studied everything I did. When I did my burglaries, I used to have, police scanners, frequency guides. I'd have a scanner in my dress like this. And, real clean cut, throw a wedding band on, no flashy jewelry. And I would do what I would do, and I would blend right into these areas. And so I was very, very calculating in what I did. But in the end, the cocaine got the better of me because anybody who's been through addiction knows, you're stuck in a hotel room peeking out blinds and thinking everybody's the cops, and they're going to set you up. I used to go to hotel rooms and take everybody's cell phone and either put them in a safe or in a briefcase and lock them up. If you want to hang out with me, you have to lock down your phones. You can't tell anybody where you are. And then after 2 days, I change rooms. I keep changing rooms. I didn't get hotel rooms on the ground floor. I was that paranoid because you don't know who's walking around, who's going to smell something, who's going to be a cop. So I went through all the paranoia. And
So as time's going on, are you catching warrants and are you wanted at this time? Like,
yeah, on and off. I'm wanted. As a fugitive several times. Jump bond. More than once. I lived on the run in Las Vegas in California for about 3 years in the late '80s, And then again, a few years later, I was on a run again, early, I'm trying to think, early 2000s for a brief period out of Fort Lauderdale, and then Miami and New York and Las Vegas. So yeah, I've been all over the country just screwing up my life big time. And so this last stretch was over 18 years. During that period, I became a law clerk and I took a bunch of college courses, university courses, and I was on the offender advisory committee, offender representative committee. And what we would do is you'd have guys who really, I had a heart to help people. I really hated to see guys struggle. They didn't understand their rights, the grievance procedures, the laws, habeas, ineffective assistance of counsel. And there was a lot of innocent guys in prison that these innocence projects weren't helping. So I took it upon myself to try to help as many people as I could, and even getting medical care and all these things that inmates are denied. And so the administration has a couple of us that they assigned as offender representatives. And so we would represent concerns to the administration and try to mediate to avoid litigation in the courts. And so
Yeah.
I did that for years. I worked for the chaplain's office. I worked for the medical department, the mental health department, all while taking college courses. So I started writing a book about my life. And I connected with a guy, Gary Greenberg. He was the editor-in-chief of the National Enquirer and some other magazines, because I knew a guy was getting framed, and it was a 19-year-old kid. And
Was
I
this
knew,
is this the first one that you wrote?
right, Gary wrote Sex and a Serial Killer with me. We were going to write my book, my life story, my scores and how I changed my life and my plans going forward after incarceration. Well, all of a sudden, dirt started blowing up in the news while I was still in prison. And he says, look, don't just make that a chapter, make it its own book. So there's that book. I wrote that in prison, put
Yeah.
that out. When I got out, it was the middle of COVID. I went to his trial out in Los Angeles just to, support the victims. I became a crime victim advocate. I went there to support, that he's held accountable, because he used to take women to my house, and there was like a lot of horrible things done in New York. And he tried to kind of draw me in. So that's the Sex and the Serial Killer, my bizarre
So
times.
that's before his wife went missing, or is that after?
I met him right after his wife went missing. I met him in the early '80s, and I met Susan Berman at the same time. It's described in the book, and the things he used to do in my house, these horrible things. And if you look at the cover of the book, you'll see Nancy Grace. I was so proud and humbled, man, because who the hell am I? But somebody telling a story, trying to help victims. Nancy Grace covered that book. Look on the top right.
Yeah,
On her
that's
podcast.
insane.
Yeah. So that book has been profiled in the Sun from London, the New York Daily, the New York Post, the National Enquirer. All these outlets started covering me while I'm still incarcerated. So then I wanted to write about, Jeffrey Epstein. Nobody really knew who Ghislaine Maxwell was. Right there you go. There he is.
Yeah.
I think that's when he had COVID. He got convicted of killing Susan, who became a good friend of mine for a time. He got convicted of killing her, and I think he got life. So he died of COVID right after he was sentenced. And unfortunately, a few months ago, this happened. In California, if you're convicted of a murder, or I think any crime, and you're still under appeal, your case gets thrown out if you die during the appeal process. So
So
right now,
it's kind of like he'd never been convicted, right?
man, listen, I'm friends with Kathy Durst's family, and there's litigation going on where they're going after his estate, they're going after his ex-wife and Douglas Durst, and hopefully a racketeering lawsuit's going to come soon, because they've been covering him for years, and that's racketeering, and they've been covering for him. The two of them that encouraged him to take care of Kathy, and this has been going on for these poor people for 40 years. So I became good friends with them. They support what I'm doing. Anyway, so I got released. Just before my release, I'm offered a TV show on the A&E network. It just fell in my lap.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
That's right.
Congratulations on that, man.
Thank you, Staxx. I appreciate it. It's like surreal. Here I'm trying to do the right thing. I'm reaching out to people. I'm not just, playing cards or chess or, on the weight pile. I'm really trying to apply myself to helping people and staying in the books. And I was just really productive doing my time. I was like miserable, of course, like anybody is doing time. But at the same time, I really try to occupy my mind at all times. If I wasn't working on my own stuff, I was trying to help somebody. If I wasn't trying to help somebody, I was stuffing my face, making the prison pizzas and watching a movie or something. But I was always staying busy, and man, I don't know. I don't hear your whole story yet, but I don't know if you've done time. But you know how it is. It's like lonely. It's fucking scary when you think you can get way more time, and they want you to take a plea or else. So we've all been through that.
I've
So
been there. I've been there. I did about 5 years in prison, state
right.
prison.
So the plea bargaining process, the higher courts have ruled that it's known that the plea bargaining process is coercive in nature. Yet a
Yeah.
coerced plea is illegal. Yet they do it all the time. Everywhere you go, they coerce pleas. They scare the
Every
crap
day.
out of it.
Every
Right.
single day, man.
So which is it? Either it's illegal or it's not because they keep doing it. But anyway, so we've all been through that. I had to take a deal, and then I took an open plea, and I got screwed. So, and then I said, "The hell with this! I'm learning the law," and I was able to help people that didn't fall into that trap or go back to court and try to get their case, redone. But mostly with medical issues, lawsuits, stuff like that. Anyway, so I get out. I'm offered this show, and it's an opportunity to show how recidivism, returning to prison rates are like 76% for people who don't have a place to live when they get out of prison. In my case, I had a falling out with my family over an inheritance in New York. And so I said, you know what? The hell with them. Living well is the best revenge. They're notifying everybody, oh, he's going to kill us when we get out. Well, I'm not going to hurt anybody, but you shouldn't have stole 800 grand from me when I was in prison. In my book, that's what my figures come out to. And I couldn't fight them in probate court because my mother was mentally ill. She was told I was dead. And then they went and wiped out everything and kept it. And some screaming to the court, hey, they're taking advantage of my mentally ill mother. We were close.
Yeah.
They wouldn't let me communicate with her. So I said, you know what? I'm not. So this show was about you coming out of prison and living with somebody who's not your family member.
Yeah.
And the people I lived with were very devout Seventh-day Adventists. And can you imagine me coming from Brooklyn? I'm a Christian guy, right? So
you got a list of R-rated movies you wanted to watch.
right. So you watch the trailer, right?
Yeah, man.
So A&E Network put out several trailers, and one of them you'll see the rules on the wall. So I can't talk about stuff they haven't put out yet, but yeah. So there's ridiculous rules, and so this thing really gets crazy and exciting. Imagine a Brooklyn guy who was trying to do the right thing, and I'm a Christian, but I'm a little sarcastic. I kid around, and to other people, that's all sinful. You can't eat what you want to eat. You can't go where you want to go. And so it shows how this whole drama unfolds. And I can't say much more than that. But if you guys have ever seen Love After Lockup, 90 Days Fiance, those shows, the same producer nominated for an Emmy Award did my show.